Christianity stands or falls on the premise that Jesus is God. So, is he? Here are 4 classic proofs in 4 minutes. First, Jesus said he was God. I know, it doesn't sound like much proof, but think about it. If he didn't claim to be God, then why should anyone else? When Israel's high priest asked Jesus whether he was the Messiah, Jesus responded, "I am." When Jesus was confronted by a crowd of Jewish skeptics, he said, "Before Abraham was born, I am." And when Peter proclaimed him to be the Christ, Jesus confirmed that indeed he is. So one proof, if you will, is Jesus' own testimony to his deity. And as C.S. Lewis said so well, someone who claims to be God is either a liar, a lunatic, or the Lord. So we've got to choose one of those. He can't just be a great moral teacher. Besides his own testimony, there's also the testimony of those who personally knew Jesus, his disciples and others close to him. Consider this. Jesus' disciples abandoned their occupations and their families to spread the news that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, rose from the dead. And they were willing to be beaten and tortured, starved, jailed, and ultimately killed for sharing that message. And that kind of martyrdom has happened in other religious traditions too. But the difference is this. These guys were actual eyewitnesses to what they were claiming. So how likely is it that all of them would sacrifice so much for something that they knew to be untrue? We also have the contemporary eyewitness testimony about Jesus being God. There's a plethora of closely documented evidence on what are called near-death experiences. Thousands of adults and children on the brink of death who later report remarkable out-of-body journeys. Some of them say that they traveled to heaven and some to hell, but a sizable proportion vividly describe meeting Jesus in the afterlife. You may have heard of recent cases like that of Colton Burpo, who, when he was 4 years old, came back from a near-death experience with stunning details of heaven and Jesus and other information that he couldn't have possibly known. And you may have heard the related story of Akiana Krameric, the daughter of atheists who, at a young age, had visions of Jesus and painted them. They didn't look at all like the typical depictions of Jesus, but little Colton later identified those paintings as the only ones that accurately captured what Jesus actually looks like. Astonishing stories like these, and there are countless others, require an explanation. If you do even a little research on near-death experiences, you may find compelling modern-day evidence for the divinity of Jesus. Further proof comes from the resurrection, Jesus rising again after his death and appearing to hundreds of people. What mere mortal does that sort of thing? One of the more elegant arguments for the historicity of the resurrection comes from Professor Gary Habermas. Based on more than 2,000 academic sources, Professor Habermas identified several pieces of evidence on which the vast majority of scholars agree. Scholars from the left and the right, scholars who are believers and non-believers. And by vast majority, he means agreement in the 90+% range. So his case is not based on the inspiration or trustworthiness of the Bible. It's based on claims granted by virtually all scholars on the subject, even the skeptical ones. Well, what did he find? Even across this diverse spectrum, almost everyone accepts 12 historical facts. Pause the video and check out this list. Notice that this list includes all the most important elements of the biblical storyline. Jesus was crucified and buried, his tomb was later found empty, and people, including hardened skeptics, changed radically after claiming to see Jesus alive again. The question becomes this. If an overwhelming majority of experts agree that these things actually occurred, what theory best explains these facts? Can you think of one that fits the data better than resurrection? And if Jesus did rise from the dead, could he really have been just a man? Okay, I'm out of time, but you're not. There's a strong, rational case that can be made that Jesus is God. And this is just a sampling. Do the research. Follow the evidence. See for yourself.